Hello, everybody. My name is Alan Clelland. I'm a member of the Board of Management of the City of Pasadena's Community Access Corporation and a 25-year resident of the City of Pasadena. I'm pleased to be the host of this, the 13th of Pasadena Media's monthly On the Move podcasts, exploring mobility issues in the City of Pasadena. Our goal is to provide information to our community on current issues of interest, present new ideas, and take an occasional look at Pasadena's history and so how we got here. This month's episode highlights companies whose roots were in work started by a graduate student while at Caltech in 2015, Andrew Janzen. This led to his founding of a company in Pasadena in 2016 that has since expanded to have a national presence and a potentially significant positive impact on addressing road safety issues. So I'd like to welcome Andrew to the On the Move podcast, and thank you so much for joining me today from your new base in Austin, Texas. So you're the founder and CEO of Street Simplified, which until 2022 was headquartered in Pasadena. Let's have a look together at technical engineering roots of the company, factors influencing its development, and where it is today. And we'll round off by having a look into future prospects. How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay, great. So could we start by you explaining what the current construct of the company is in terms of location and staffing?
So we're currently based in Austin, but we have a couple team members in the LA area, and the rest are scattered out throughout the nation and the world. We started scaling during COVID, so we had to be very creative about how to run a company completely remotely. And then once no two people are in the same place, then you can't go back.
Yeah, I several of us found that out. Yes, exactly. Well, you mentioned global, yeah.
We do have a couple people globally. Yeah.
Great, excellent. And I also mentioned in the intro that the company has roots in Caltech. How important was this in its birth and early development?
Well, I don't know if I would be doing Street without having gone to Caltech. I got my master's from Caltech in 2016, and just hearing about neural networks and advances in computer vision, how to design one, took a couple classes of computer vision while I was at Caltech. That was not a big topic area at the time. It wasn't. It was definitely advanced, but I had not even heard of computer vision in undergrad, and it was mainstay at Caltech. Like, everyone was talking about it because it was new at the time, and so being able to get access to that technology as a grad student and then apply it to an interesting problem like the problem of transportation. How do you detect vehicles and pedestrians on roadways? It was a problem that hadn't been tackled like that before. And so we got the chance to tackle that early, which is a significant privilege. And, frankly, I wouldn't have even known the tools to start with or been able to build the early team to build the product out without having those roots at Caltech.
And that technology that you mentioned, that was new to you, neural networks?
Well, deep neural networks, yes. And networks that could run in real time. There were, deep neural networks could run in real time. In 2016, when we started, you couldn't even get a neural network that could run in real time on an edge device. And by 2018, there was enough progress that you actually could. So our early work was actually writing our own neural networks from scratch. It could work at 200 FPS. So that's not something. It pretty quickly became irrelevant. But that was definitely an interesting part of our adventure. And really, a neural network just models the first few layers of the human brain. So your eyes see a visual signal that goes through a neural network in the first 6 to 10 neurons behind your optic nerve, and that set of neurons basically converts the optical signal into signals your brain can process, just very, very similarly to how a deep neural network works.
Would it be fair to say that that neural networks were an early building block to artificial intelligence?
I think they're a big part of it. Every human has a visual neural network in their brain. So I don't think you can do a good job with artificial intelligence without understanding what the world looks like. And frankly, a lot of the other metrics we're using now for large language models, they're actually just modifications in the same concepts and different structures for how to do very similar things.
So what brought you to look at applications in the world of transportation in the first place?
So I was driving home late one night from Caltech, and obviously this, if you've been to Caltech, that's not at all abnormal. And I ran into a red light. It was on Hill and Del Mar. I was trying to take a left, and it was red, and it was red for like 90 seconds, seemingly. There was no other vehicles waiting on any approach. So I'm like, why am I even here? Like, why can't I just, like, why isn't the light green for me? And I was very tempted to run the red light, frankly, and I didn't. But it's just one of those things that's like, we are literally a block from one of the best research institutions in the world, and we can't even figure out how to make lights go green when people show up. Like, what is this, right? So it seemed like a trivial technical problem, and one that could be solved easily with some relatively simple computer vision technology. And that's kind of what got me interested. That's why I took the couple classes I did on computer vision at Caltech. And then for one of those classes, I actually modeled up a roadway video detection model, and actually got it to work pretty well. I was running it on my laptop. I just duct taped the webcam I bought the pole right at the edge of campus, and collected the video. And you could see, with even a simple model, you could see people half a mile away walking down the street, model cars on side streets. And as long as there wasn't anything crazy happening, like any major cloud, like rolling clouds, the model was great. And during the day, at night, not so great. But that's what got us started. And
this is a start. This was just the start.
Right. Yep. So, and then we got to meet Joaquin Sequez around that time. Yeah. He's been promoted, but he's now the director of transportation for the city. He was at the time the city traffic engineer, and he showed us kind of all around, let us do testing in Pasadena. So we did a good bit of testing on Fair Oaks, Colorado and Fair Oaks, which is one of the highest crash locations for pedestrians in Pasadena. As you can imagine, very, very busy intersection.
Oh, that's right in the heart of Old Town. I mean, really intense pedestrian traffic.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And great restaurants. Yeah. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you developed the system while you were still a student at Caltech?
No, I mean, I developed the concept, but graduated. My last class on the computer vision was in the spring of 2016. So I took the class and then graduated.
Excellent. So what came next then? Because here you've got a city that knows what you're doing, and you've got a new approach which seems to work. I know from my experience in the transportation industry, that's still a big step, to go from having something that works to actually getting them installed. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say there's a spectrum of works. There's things that work at the prototype level, and there's things that work in production. So I actually started at JPL in 2016 after graduating, and I worked there part-time for about 2 years till 2018. And in 2016, around the same time, I started Street Simplified. So I was working 3 days a week at JPL and 3 days a week on this kind of pet project. And we had no funding, so it was all just kind of trying to basically make it up as we go. And we built out like a full prototype system. And then we were engineers. We didn't know anything about business. So it took us a couple of years to actually start talking to customers and asking the right questions. And one of the responses we consistently got was, yeah, that's interesting. Give us a unit. We'll test it out for 6 months. And maybe if it works, then we'll do a larger deployment. And the problem is when you don't have money, you can't just wait for them to figure it out or test it. And especially when you have to give them test hardware. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and ask the question, like, is this even workable? And what's a better way to get clients to say yes than trying to give them hardware? And that's where we kind of switched to a study model where we started asking the question, okay, how can we give them the same type of data that they would get from a permanent unit on a temporary basis, help them understand what data they're getting, how well it works temporarily, and then if they're interested, then you can deploy a larger scale system as a second step. And that's where things really started taking on. And the next year, my wife got in a crash. We just married and 2019, and within about 2 months of us getting married, she was rear-ended in a crash, Nordoff and White Oak in Los Angeles. And the police officer in the scene said, you know what, there's nobody's bleeding. We don't need to write a police report. I was there. I drove over and, to check on her. And it didn't look like a big deal. You know, her front bumper had been bented up. She was sandwiched between a vehicle that ran into her from behind and a vehicle she had slid into in front. So it's a 3-car pileup. But after taking her to urgent care, found out she had 2 herniated discs in her upper neck, 2 in her lower back, 2 herniated discs and 2 bulging discs. And basically that means that she'll never be able to lift more than 20 pounds again.
Oh, no goodness.
Within about 2 or 3 days, we kind of realized that this was going to majorly change our lives. And that's when we started to rethink the technology at Street and ask the question, okay, we have cool technology that understands what vehicles, pedestrians do on roadways. Let's use that to help people save lives. And that's really what got the current version of Street on the market, is focusing on the technology to understand traffic safety.
It's quite a shift from, checking to see which cars are there to and that's more of an efficiency in traffic movement and reduction in delay goal to a traffic safety goal.
The goal shift was significant, but the technology shift was almost unnoticeable. So it was a pretty logical extension of our existing technology stack.
Yeah. So to shift from reducing delay, getting people there quicker, to keeping people alive, basically. Yeah.
Right.
And the agencies were willing to pay for safety projects?
They took the jump. Yeah. And again, there were no alternatives. So, if they wanted to answer a deep question of the location, there were only a couple firms in the entire world that did this kind of analysis at the time.
Yes, exactly.
We had actually better technology than all of them, and we were cheaper. So it was not it was kind of a slam dunk if you knew about Street, which
that's another problem. Yes, that's another issue.
About Street, the people that knew about us and understood what we were actually trying to do, it was not a hard sell.
So, but what is the key to success of your systems then? I mean, it's one thing to say, well, we're now going to look at safety aspects of an intersection. But you become noted for safety systems in Street Simplified. So what contributes to that, to your success there?
Yeah, well, for one, so the crash data, somebody has to get injured or killed for you to have a crash data point, right? So
for it to be recorded, yes, to be reported to the police.
Yeah. There are a lot of, about 50% of crashes nationally are not reported, but that doesn't mean, even just because they're not reported doesn't mean that somebody didn't get injured necessarily.
But yes, as you found out with your wife's crash.
Yeah, correct. But having crash data still doesn't give you a very good picture of what's happening. All you have is an Excel spreadsheet with one row in it that tells you the cars that got in a crash, the time when the crash occurred, maybe which directions they were going. It's not enough for you to really make sense of the scenario from a crash safety perspective. And then you have a crash report the police officer fills out. Sometimes they write 1 or 2 words. And sometimes they write a full page narrative, which can be very helpful. But if you have 100 crashes in a 10-year period, who's going to read 100 different documents to try to figure this out? So even today, most civil engineering firms don't even read the crash reports when they're doing a safety analysis. So that it's hard to access the data. It's confusing. And in many cases, you're still missing a lot of the risk factors that are present that simply didn't result in a crash yet. So what we try to do at Street is we look at the video data using AI. We observe patterns of risk, and those could be near miss events or red light running patterns, speeding patterns. And then you ask the next step questions. What could an agency do to resolve this problem? And there's a host of options in most cases, but when you get down to it, there aren't necessarily a host of options that will work in their specific situation. So sometimes they may only have 2 or 3 really, really good things that they could make a change on. And one of them might be a multi-million-dollar safety investment, and one might be a $400 sign. And it can really
your range of
oh yeah, absolutely. But sometimes the effectiveness of one treatment is just as significant as the effectiveness of the other. So you have to, so that's part of where we become the agency. Hey, here's what we observed. Here's the options you might consider given the data we've observed. And then here's what you can do about it. And obviously it's up to them to decide what they want to do. If they do decide to make a change, we can quantitatively tell them what the impact of that change was. We can do an after study and measure the risk after the implementation was done and say, okay, before you had this many near misses, after you had this many near misses within this period of time. So your near miss rate went down by 20, 30% because of installing this treatment. And
so that's an important point, I think, Matthew and Andrew, sorry to interrupt, but you brought in the term near miss there. So you don't have to wait until there's a crash, an accident, somebody injured. You're collecting data that will say, hey, you got a problem here, which could lead to crashes.
Correct. Yeah, we don't generally detect crashes in short duration studies. It's rare. It does happen. But more of what we're just detecting is risk data. And in an average day, we're observing 409 near crash events. So
409 near
in one day. Yep.
That takes a bit of digesting that as to, and you're doing the AI analysis on all of this to indicate what potential solutions are to avoid those near misses turning into crashes.
Correct. We use our engineering team to determine what to do, but we don't use AI to guesstimate where they should spend their funds. I think the AI will get there, but we trust humans more for those engineering decisions than we trust AI at the moment.
Does that mean that often you can come up with some unorthodox solutions for a problem?
We often come up with, we discover unorthodox problems, right?
Unorthodox problems.
People running the night, like we observed this before. We were studying it at a intersection in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's the same vehicle multiple days in a row ran the same side street red light running at the same time of night. It's like 3 a.m. And so you're observing basically what's happening is you have like this one guy or girl, whoever it is, literally every day on their way to work early in the morning, running at the red light if it's red. So, it's not a hard problem to fix. If you know that that's going to happen, put a detector on the side street, detect the person, give them a green light. So, if you know what the type of problem it is, you wouldn't think, side street detection, which is generally considered more of an operational issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not in the list. You're not going to find that as a major safety treatment in your list, right? But at that specific location, that's a safety treatment and it would work. So, oftentimes you'll identify, if you know what the problem is, then you can come up with some relatively unorthodox solutions and we can prove that they work, right? It's, when you think of unorthodox, it's generally like something that's not in the book, unproven, completely untested. And who knows? Like you don't want your doctor starting to practice, pull out
orthodox medicine.
So you want your doctors treating you with standard medical practice, but when you can do an MRI and discover that you've got some tumor that they can take out surgically, with an out-of-patient procedure, then it makes a lot more sense why they would want to give you surgery when generally they give you a 10, the grunt versus the chemo and everything else. So, you can start to do things more surgically. You can start to solve problems more surgically rather than just kind of dumping blanket approaches on problems, which is generally how things have been done because there haven't been tools that allow you to analyze safety from to this level of detail.
Well, I'm to enable a validity testing of a very specific single countermeasure that hasn't been used before, to build a confidence in it. That's pretty amazing that you can do that.
That's true. There's over 1,000 countermeasures in the FHWA countermeasure clearinghouse that have to some extent. So there's definitely a lot to work with that already exists, but there are a handful of treatments. For example, active pedestrian detection is approved in California, Virginia, Florida, a couple other states, but it's not, I don't know about Virginia, but I know it's approved in both Florida and California. And we don't have a good CRF port yet. So a CRF is a crash reduction factor. It tells you if you install this treatment, here's the expected crash reduction.
This is what expect reduction is, so impact would have.
But we don't have, it's approved, meaning that California safety engineers believe it will work.
Yeah.
But they don't have a number to prove that.
And it's still
we can tell you, or at least for a specific location, if you installed it, we could tell you how much did this improve safety.
Excellent. Well, that is invaluable in dealing with the public, to be quite honest. When the question comes, well, why did you do this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, and some treatments are politically charged. There's definitely, most are not, but some treatments can be politically charged.
No, absolutely. I think it can be a very sensitive area, especially when people's lives are involved. Yeah. So are you able to quote any results in terms of increases in safety?
So we definitely have. Most of our clients, the average project timeline is around 2 to 3 years. So after we do a before study, we started scaling up in 2020. So 5 years, but that means that frankly, only a small handful of projects have gotten to the implementation stage so far. Which I'd love for civil engineering to move faster than it does, but I can't change that. So we did one project in Santa Rosa. It was a rapid a RRFB treatment, which is a flashing beam treatment.
You're the rectangular rapid flashing.
Rectangular Russell mode. Yep. Yeah. And the compliance rate, it was a railroad crossing, and right next to the railroad crossing was a pedestrian crosswalk. Then crossing that pedestrian crosswalk and railroad crossing was a major thoroughfare. And the before study yield rates were 18%. So that means that if you were standing on the curb waiting to cross a marked pedestrian crosswalk, about 1 in 5 vehicles would stop for you. To say it differently, you'd have to wait for 5 cars to pass before one decided.
Before one would stop. Yeah.
Right. So if you stepped out, you would have a 4 out of 5 chance of getting hit.
Yeah.
So another way to put that.
Basically, that's the way to look at it. Yeah.
Terrible, absolutely terrible from a safety perspective. So they installed it, and the yield compliance rate after installation was 77%, so nearly 80%.
Whoa.
So that means that nearly 4 out of 5 vehicles would stop for you after installation if you push the flashing button. And the other surprising part is that even if you didn't push the push button and didn't activate the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, in the after study, even people that didn't push the button, the yield rate doubled from about 18 to 40%. So just installing the treatment helped drivers get the habit of yielding to pedestrians.
Oh, okay.
And that alone improved yield compliance, even when the pedestrian failed to activate the treatment.
Because these are drivers that maybe are driving through that crossing several times a week.
Yeah, definitely. And we waited about a month or 2 months before doing the after study. So they were now familiar with this location with the new treatment installed. So, there was enough time for behavior to change. But what was fascinating about it for me is, you can actually have a massive improvement in safety by installing relatively affordable treatment. And their alternative was to put in a signalized intersection. And I should not say signalized intersection, a signalized pedestrian crossing, which is about the same cost as a signalized intersection.
Yep.
And that's about 20 times more.
20 times more expensive, yeah.
So they've done a lot of, I think from what I've heard from the traffic engineer, they've actually installed a good handful of these across other rail crossings, similar contexts, in the entire area where this train crossing is and this trail is. And they've been able to do it within the last year and a half because of cost.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Affordable, they can build that into their budget compared to trying to budget.
And it becomes a well-known countermeasure, right? So it's more effective.
I would say it's a well-known countermeasure nationally, but to use it for the specific context of a rail crossing,
yes, that's unusual.
That's an unusual context.
Excellent. That's a great example. It really is. So the time we got left here, Andrew, but what lies in the future for Street as you look ahead?
Well, so I can't say everything we're doing, but
of course
one thing I can say is that we're on a mission to help agencies get the tools they need to save lives. And so I think moving forward, what we're going to see is these tools are going to become more accessible. They're going to be cheaper. And my goal is for them to be used not only in the United States, but also globally. And, even in places like the third world where there's a massive issue with transportation safety, but there's no tools, and no one's building tools or investing in tools in the third world because there's no money in it. Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, kind of hone the technology to a point where it can be fully automated, and agencies, even in other parts of the world, can get access to this technology and start saving their lives.
And
just so you know, there's 1.3 million people dying globally in traffic crashes. In the US, it's over 40,000, depends on the year. I think it was 44,000 last year.
It's getting worse. Yes,
it is getting worse in general, but there's a massive opportunity globally to help save lives as well that I think we're trying to address. And for the U.S. market, I think a lot of the work is just helping agencies start to, because again, we're still only working with less than 5% of agencies nationally.
Goodness me, so tremendous opportunity for the firm then.
Well, yeah, and for frankly, concerned citizens and communities to get access to this technology.
Yes.
If you have a safety complaint and the current response you're going to get from your traffic engineer is, I looked up the crash data and I don't see anything on there that's concerning, then that's not a good enough response anymore.
You're not acceptable.
They need to do a study that evaluates the risk data, not just the crash data, to assess whether there's really a risk there that could potentially cost a life.
That's tremendous. That really is. That's got tremendous implications as well, and benefits. Well, thank you very, very much for providing this fascinating insight into your company, Street Simplified, and this history and its successes that you're having. And I'm sure the audience will join me in wishing you continuing success in the future. And I'd also like to thank the audience for tuning into this episode of On the Move, and would encourage to follow future episodes of our podcast. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Andrew.
Alan.